Creative thinking techniques for generating multiple alternatives. Mind map. A mind map is a creative thinking technique which allows for an individual or team to make connections between different elements through graphically making connections with related concepts. This is achieved through having an idea at the center of the mind map, with related concepts visibly branching out from the initial idea in a radial format, with the branching concepts then making their own branches with their own related concepts. The end product will display a map illustrating the connections between these concepts related to a project with the main subject at the center. So what we're going to do here then is now look at an example of a mind map, and I'm going to do my mind map on technology. Now, if I was trying to teach technology concepts to individuals new to learning about specifically computing technology, I would try to think where would I start? And the first concepts I'd probably start with are that of hardware, software, and people, and try to illustrate that these are the main components related to technology and what we kind of have to address if we want a system to work. Then from these three sub concepts, I then think what actual features then relate to those concepts. So in relation to hardware, I talk about input, processing, and output technology that are used as hardware devices on systems. In relation to software, I talk about the operating system being the foundation of software on a system and the GUI enabling users to interact. And then in relation to people themselves, if they want to use technology that need to address the issues that they might face and that technology needs to cater them to overcome those issues, and that they need to be trained in how to use that technology itself. So as you can see here, I've got technology at the center. I've got software, hardware, and people being my main concepts of related technology, and they're going around the actual main concept in a radial format. And it looks a bit off because I've used an odd number of actual main concepts related to it. Okay, but they're still in a radial format. And then from there, they're making their own branches, okay, with sub concepts, okay, so I can further understand the relationship, okay, between all the different terminology that I'm using here in relation to technology. Now, there are actual connections that I could make between sub-concepts, like I could make a connection between GUI and people, but we don't do this in this diagram. That's more something we do in a concept map. So what I want to do is just quickly illustrate how concept maps differ. And essentially, concept maps, they have crossovers between sub-concepts, but in relation to mind maps, we don't show really any crossover between sub-concepts or terminology within a mind map. Okay, the subsections follow their own distinct paths. Okay, and that's how we make our branches. They all go off in their different directions. Mind maps also always follow this radial pattern that we're showing here too, and it's quite distinct when we see it. But you can see a version of this type of diagram where the sub-concepts are making lines and making connections between each other. That's more when we're getting into concept map territory, but they aren't as fixed with their rules, and we'll get onto that in a further video. But what I want you to understand here is this is a mind map. I've got my idea at the center. Its main concepts branch out from it initially, and then those concepts related to my initial concept then branch out and make their own actual connections and show their own relationships with other terminology. They're great ways for understanding an idea and essentially what issues and elements relate to each other when working on design or trying to understand a principle, even trying to understand study and existing systems. And making these connections kind of makes connections in our brain and helps us with comprehending how specific things are either going to work or how they actually do work if they're already in place.